Yes, if he was alive today, Malcolm, that power in the world is now being used to liberate the oppressed, to resist the oppressor, as Allah has spoken in Surah Al-Kahf of the Quran. And so this is good news for Donbass. They spent some $5 billion to bring about a color revolution in Ukraine. And they have already succeeded in phase one of the intervention. And that is that Ukraine does not have the capacity. There's nothing in the sky, nothing in the sea to be able to resist Russia. But the people of the Western world, and also the rest of the world, who are now suffering and who will suffer even more as a consequence of the response of the West to Russia's intervention in Ukraine, they will now have to ask themselves, why is it that we have to suffer? Alliance of Muslims and Christians which will liberate Jerusalem is already taking place now. And what we are seeing now is a fulfillment of a prophecy of the Quran. Yes, a prophecy of the Quran. Not only is Russia returning to her Orthodox Christian heart, having been relieved of the atheist Soviet Union, the world's most famous atheist state, but Russia now is returning to her Orthodox Christian heart. This is something every believer should welcome, except those whose hearts are filled with hatred, only hatred, hatred, hate. The hatred is consuming them. They hate Russia. They hate the Orthodox Christians. They wish they could have succeeded in Syria with the bogus jihad, so they could have slaughtered all the Christians. Pathetic people. Pathetic people, yeah. Leave them. Russia is returning to her Orthodox Christian heart. And Russia has been blessed by the Lord God with power, military power. It is because of that phenomenal military power that Russia now possesses that the world is seeing something extraordinary. Normally, they would have already attacked Russia. The war would have already started. This is what we've had for 300 years. How come? They cannot even impose a no-fly zone over Ukraine because they say that will risk war. They prefer to wage war on Libya, but not on Russia. And so we are seeing now a change in the world order. For the first time, there's a power in the world capable of resisting the oppression. And so we look forward now to a future where the world order that is to come will be one in which increasingly power will be used, power resting on the foundations of faith. Power will be used not to join NATO as Turkey has done, but rather power will be used to resist the oppressor. And NATO is the world's biggest oppressor today. I am not exaggerating when I say this. NATO is the world's biggest oppressor all these last few decades. So power will now be used increasingly in the world to resist the oppressor and to liberate the oppressed. This must be music in the ears of Malcolm X if he was alive today. Yes, if he was alive today, Malcolm. That power in the world is now being used to liberate the oppressed, to resist the oppressor, to reward and to help those who have faith and whose conduct is righteous, exactly as Allah has spoken in Surah Al-Kahf of the Quran. And so this is good news for Donbass. They spent some $5 billion to bring about a color revolution in Ukraine. in 2014. They thought we succeeded. Our money was well spent. I wonder how much they're spending to try to remove Imran Khan as Prime Minister of Pakistan. We always have traitors in our midst who can be bought with US dollars. What can we do? So they spent some $5 billion to bring about a color revolution in Ukraine. And the government which was friendly to Russia was replaced with a government which is hostile to Russia. And now Ukraine, which is an Orthodox Christian country, is led by a Jew, a Jewish president over an Orthodox Christian country. What strange things are happening in the world today. But Donbass said, we cannot accept this, your color revolution. We are not prepared to submit to it. And for 7 years they persecuted and they terrorized and they oppressed the people of Donbass, who were Russian speaking. And Russia said, now enough is enough. And Russia has now intervened. Why? To liberate the people who are being oppressed from oppression. That's why. And if you don't like that, go back to school. This world is a moral order. And the moral law is the highest law. They forget when they teach international relations in the universities, they forget that there is an actor in the affairs of the world, an actor who never sleeps. Neither does he sleep, nor does he ever get tired. The Lord God is an actor in the affairs of the world. You cannot forget him. He intervenes in the historical process. And now when Russia decided, enough is enough, we're going to protect our people from oppression. Russia realized, if you to intervene in Donbass alone, the Western world, NATO, would have flooded Ukraine with weapons and arms and everything they wanted. And the war would last for years and years and years. So Russia had to take over the whole of Ukraine in order to be able to save Donbass. And they have already succeeded in phase 1 of their intervention. And that is that Ukraine does not have the capacity to wage any kind of resistance to Russia other than simple, pathetic little fighting on the ground. There's nothing in the sky, nothing in the sea to be able to resist Russia. So phase 1 is successful already. And now Russia is moving to phase 2 to liberate the entire territory of Donbass. And for that there's going to be some fighting. But I want to leave the military part of the analysis because Russia is showing her capacity to pursue her objective to the end. And Russia has also said, we're not going to leave until Ukraine commits itself to be a neutral state. It will never join NATO. But the people of the Western world, and also the rest of the world, who are now suffering and who will suffer even more as a consequence of the response of the West to Russia's intervention in Ukraine, they will now have to ask themselves, why is it that we have to suffer? Because they say, no, Ukraine has the right to join NATO. No, Ukraine has the right to join NATO. No, Ukraine has the right to join NATO. And because of that, the whole world must now suffer. But Ukraine will have to humble itself. Ukraine will have to submit. There's no other alternative. Ukraine will have to submit and to accept that we will be a neutral state. And so no joining of NATO. All the whole world suffering because of this stupidity. Ukraine has the freedom to join NATO. So guess what will happen now?